Hello. Well, it's day 69 of Sydney's COVID lockdown, and this is the 15th locktail, the Bronx. Now, this video might be a little bit longer than a couple of the others because I really want to talk you through this cocktail. Now, the Bronx Zoo opened in November 1899, and by 1901 there was a publication that showed that a Bronx cocktail had been named after the opening of the zoo. But the Bronx cocktail didn't turn up in recipe books until 1908. And when it did, there were 3 different versions that turned up. So all the way through the Bronx's history, and the Bronx is a contemporary of the Manhattan, it's one of the cocktails named after the 4 boroughs of New York, and as it moved through history, there was some friction between these different recipes. And it is one of those cocktails that's really matched the changing face of cocktails for the last century. What's happened over that period of time is it's become quite a strong gin and orange juice cocktail. Probably because with the renaissance of gin, you can pick a really good gin, you can express the botanicals, you can really celebrate that in the drink. And what's happened is the inclusion of vermouths has diminished. Probably for the same reason. Vermouths weren't really, they were a little bit on the nose, so to speak, and they were dialed back in the cocktail mixing recipes. Now I want to go back to 1908 and some of these earlier recipes, and I want to bring this back from being a gin dominant, gin and orange juice cocktail to a cocktail that celebrates French and Italian vermouth. Now to do that, I'm going to use a really complementary gin, one that doesn't yell or scream or get in the way of the flavours of the vermouth. And I'm choosing this Tasmanian Hartshorn Sheep's Way gin. The Sheep's Way really brings a smoothness to it. The gin is quite neutral in terms of it's got strong botanicals, but they're neutral in terms of their flavour profile. And it's really just a great gin backdrop for this cocktail. Now, if you're making this cocktail without high quality vermouth, then go make it orange, dial up the gin. But that's not what I'm doing with this 15th cocktail remix. So 30 mils of the really quality gin. And one of the great things about doing this as well is we bring it back to one of those cocktails that is a trilogy. It's got those 3 equal parts. Now I need 2 vermouths. I need an Italian vermouth and a French vermouth. And you may have seen on some of the other videos I've been using this Oscar 697 Sweet Rosso Red vermouth. It's amazing. I'm a very big fan. It's made in traditional style, so it would be relevant to something of that era, but it's made with contemporary methods, and it's just an amazing Italian red vermouth. And I'm bringing out for the first time in these cocktails Lille Blanc. Now it was around for a century. A good friend of mine calls it Little Blanket. I sort of like that. It really feels like a little blanket. When it's fresh, it's got really sweet Sauterne type notes to it. It has a very long history. It had a 100-year history called Quina Lillet, and when it was Quina Lillet, it had quinine in it. Quite a significant amount of quinine in it, giving it some bitterness. But in 1986, they moved it to this Lillet Blanc recipe. It lost that bitterness from the quinine, and that'll be important in a minute. So I'm using 30 mils of that. Keep this in the fridge, keep it cold. Make sure you use your vermouths within a couple of months. They don't last forever. And this is going to be a real celebration of those 2. Now, instead of adding 30 mils of orange juice, which is some of the recipes, the earlier recipe just calls for 5 mils. Just a bar spoon of orange juice. Now my bar spoon's a little bit less than 5 mils, so I'm just going to put 2 of those in. And I'm going to enrich that orange flavour by getting some orange oil out of the skin of an orange, and really just give it that sort of, without adding volume, just a little bit of extra depth. And I'm also going to use Regan's orange bitters. It's a US bitters, really suitable for the idea of a Bronx cocktail. This is a really great bitters for your old fashions. It's a very bitter, very strong orange bitters, more so than that Angostura orange bitters. And one of the key reasons, and this will all come together, is when this was redeveloped to represent some of the bitters of that era, they included, and this was a collaboration with the Sazerac company, they included quinine in it. So it's putting that quinine that's no longer in the Quina Lillet, it's no longer in the Lillet Blanc, back into the cocktail. So we get not only a stronger orange profile across that orange zest and the orange juice and the Regan's orange bitters, we add the quinine back to bring the Lillet back more towards the Quina Lillet that would have been around in the time that this cocktail, in 1901 and that era. So let's get that nice and cold. Mix that all in. And then we're going to strain that. I pre-strain my orange juice, but if you haven't done that and you're using fresh with pith, you probably want to pour this through a filter and double strain it. You really already smell the orange coming off that. Garnish it with an orange spiral. And there we have it. The 1901 or 1908 by the recipe books Bronx cocktail. Day 69 of Sydney COVID lockdown. And just celebrating my double vax. So hopefully, even if the light isn't at the end of the tunnel, hopefully the light is at the end of the tunnel. So it's almost the weekend, although who knows when it's Blur's Day in lockdown. Go and make yourself a cocktail and make it a Bronx. And if you lash out and go and get some Hartshorn Sheep's Way gin and some Lillet Blanc and some Oscar 697 vermouths, you won't regret it. They're all amazing ingredients. I hope you're doing okay. Stay safe. I'll see you for the next locktail. Cheers.